Mr. Jorge Uxo, who will speak about a related area, I would say, which is inflation control. And while having the situation we have today in Sweden, you could look and being a bit jealous about how Spain has actually handled the same situation with inflation. So we're very much looking forward to hearing you present how this is actually taking place. So please give a warm hand to Mr. Jorge Uxo.
Hi, good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this inspiring discussion about the challenges of economic policies from a progressive perspective. In my case, in this first intervention, I will address some relevant points regarding the evolution of inflation in Spain and the economic policies to reduce it. And let me start with a brief description of its recent evolution. Until July 2022, Spain had a higher inflation rate than the European average, mainly because the rise in international oil and gas prices was passed through the final consumer prices more quickly and strongly. And this has to do with the fact that many households have their electricity prices linked to the wholesale markets in Spain, and the weight of electricity in the price index is higher also in Spain. In the last 12 months, however, the situation is reversed, with Spain recording an average inflation rate 3 points below the Eurozone's. And in last August, Spanish annual inflation was the lowest in the euro area, along with Belgium. In the next months, however, the Spanish inflation rate will probably converge with the European average due to the base effects, as Spain compares its prices with the months of the sharp fall in inflation in the second half of 2022. Even so, the average for this year is likely to be 2 points below the average. Both in the months in which inflation in Spain was above the European average and in the last year in which our inflation has been lower, these differences can be explained fundamentally by the different behavior of energy prices. In the first graph, for example, we show the different contribution to inflation in Spain and the Eurozones of energy, food, other industrial goods and services. And as we can see, 80% of the higher fall in inflation in the last year in Spain is explained by the different behavior of energy prices. And moreover, if we separate in the second graph the energy component by the different types of energy, we see that electricity prices account for 75% of the difference in inflation between Spain and the euro area during last year. Of course, lower gas and oil prices in international markets have played a key role in reducing inflation in Spain as in other countries, but also the broad set of fiscal and regulatory policies that the Spanish government has been deploying. The principal part of these measures has focused on the energy markets. Here it's worth highlighting, for example, the lowering of indirect taxes, both on electricity and gas, the limitation of the pass-through of higher international gas prices to the price of final consumers who have benefited from a government-regulated tariff, the subsidy of 20 cents per liter during 2022 of fuel purchased at a petrol station, and above all, the reform of the wholesale electricity market through the capping of the price of gas used to produce electricity. I will look at in more detail in the next slide, but before doing so, it should be noted that this set of measures has allowed Spain to be the country where energy prices have fallen the most in the whole of the OECD in the last years. And that the government has also intervened in other prices, such as public transport, rents, and some basic foodstuffs. That measure has also been taken to offset the effects of inflation on the most affected families and economic sectors, and in the opposite direction, that some extraordinary taxes on the high revenues obtained by energy and financial companies have been adopted as well. Well, as I have said, the most relevant reform has been the change since in June 2022 in the operation of the wholesale electricity market, which has also been applied in Portugal. This gas price cap partially modifies the marginalist operation of this market, although it does not entirely eliminate it. The most expensive energy, usually that which use gas to produce electricity, continues to set the market price, but now with the limit derived from this cap. In this way, implicitly, a maximum price is set for electricity produced with cheaper technologies, with where we making windfall profits. It should be borne in mind that companies that use gas to produce electricity are compensated for the difference, if any, between the maximum price established by this mechanism and the price that they actually have to pay. And this compensation is partly passed on to consumers, but it is always, by definition, less than the initial savings. The most important results of this mechanism is that it has served to decouple the price of electricity in Spain from the rise in international gas prices. As we can see in the graph above, the sharp rise in gas prices in August and September of 2022 made electricity abruptly more expensive in the wholesale markets of other countries, as Germany, Italy, or France, but not in Spain, where this price was falling indeed. And in the graph below, we can see that this has also been reflected in the final price paid by consumers. The Spanish government estimates that this mechanism has led to a saving of 5 billion euros in 2022 for final consumers, which we can consider as a transfer of the windfall profits from electricity companies to households and other small companies. There are some reflections on the functioning of these policies that I think are worth highlighting. The first one is that they have indeed been effective and contribute to reducing inflation. According to the Bank of Spain, more than 2 points of the reduction in inflation in 2022 can be directly attributed to their effect. Secondly, they have reinforced growth, GDP growth, at least but 1 percentage point, according again to the Bank of Spain. This is, in my opinion, interesting because it calls into question the traditional view of the role of fiscal policy against inflation through demand restraint, which some members of the ECB and international organizations still claim. In fact, this role of public policies and the new labor policy deployed by the Spanish government, focused on labor stability and the increase in the minimum wage, explain the resilience that the Spanish economy is showing in the current context. Furthermore, the main beneficiaries of this measure have been lower-income households. This contrasts sharply with monetary policy, which is nevertheless still conventionally regarded as the main instrument against inflation. Only a few tenths of the ongoing reduction in inflation can be attributed to higher interest rates. Its effects takes place aggregate demand and aggravating the household's cost of living crisis, and it even hampers the implementation of the fiscal measures that have proven to be effective. Finally, in this graph, we can see that the domestic inflation component, which we can approximate with the GDP deflator, has been gaining weight as the initial rise in intermediate cost was based on to domestic prices. But this second graph shows that in 2022 and the first half of 2023, the average annual growth of this GDP deflator was almost 5%, and of this increase, unit profits account for 80%, compared with only 20% explained by unit labor cost. The consequence of this has been that despite having a lower inflation than the European average, real wages have actually fallen to a greater extent in our country, 5.3% cumulative over this period, compared to 3.5% in the Eurozone. On the contrary, the fiscal information of 1 million companies allows us to estimate the evolution of the markup the companies set on their cost since the start of inflationary crisis, and the rise in this magnitude that we see in this second graph confirms that companies have managed to pass on the rise of costs more than proportionally to their prices, although with some sectoral heterogeneity. In my opinion, solving these issues of increasing profit margins, decreasing real wages, and as a consequence, the unequal distribution of the burden of inflation should be the next challenge facing Spain's counter-inflationary policy. And thank you very much.